Well, today we got a special guest with us, Brooke Chase. She's a mom, a wife, a small business owner, and my daughter Hannah's best bud. And so we're going to talk about some things that moms are dealing with today on the Bucky Kennedy Show.
Got a good bit for you.
Well, Brooke, glad to have you on the show today. I mean, we've talked about this a little bit, and want to talk about some things that you and your friends are talking about, raising kids, being a mom, being a wife, business owner. I mean, you got a lot of stuff going on.
We got a busy life.
Yeah, and so there's a lot happening in our world today that I'm sure y'all talk about.
Yep, I've got the gift of gab, so I don't mind talking.
She's here to talk about it. And so she's got some questions. And I mean, I've heard some of these questions, and this is going to be a fun show. So y'all get ready. Brooke Chase is here today. So, Brooke, let's
All right. I'm excited to be here. All right, few questions.
All right.
Big one is social media and the influence it has. What's a healthy way to, draw the boundaries with your kids? An age limit or, the realistic approach too that a lot of kids see it, whether they have it on their phones or not, they're still getting the tips from TikTok or the videos on YouTube. There's so many loopholes in this massive world of social media.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is you have to have a plan, and so many parents react to something that's gone wrong because they didn't have a plan in place. And they go, oh boy, we got to get a plan.
Right.
So you really have to be intentional and you have to be diligent. And you really need to know those boundaries because there are things you can do with phones now that allow parents a little bit more control and stuff like that. But the second part is the culture we live in, the friends they're with. And so you really have to be intentional about knowing who they're with, what they're talking about. And also, depending on the age of your kids, and I'll let everybody know how old your kids are.
So I have a 5-year-old little boy and I have a 6, almost 7-year-old little girl. So my little girl, she's right at that tipping age of, she's a little less interested in Barbies and more interested in like skincare is all the rave right now.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow.
Yeah. And it does seem like that things are affecting kids at a younger age today that maybe when you were growing up, you didn't think about when you were until 12, 13 or when.
Skincare, I didn't think about that till I was in my 30s and I started needing it.
So anyway, they're being presented with more and more stuff. And I think because of what culture does. And so there's always these conversations. You need to learn to have conversations with your kids early, even though we hear these things. Our kids aren't ready for these conversations. They are. The world thinks they are because they're coming at it. So apparently the world knows more. And there's a great quote. You may wait to tell your children the truth, but the devil will tell them a lie today.
That's right.
So it really is having that intentional plan, finding out, and then keeping up with what are the influences in their life. What is my child attracted to? You have to spend time with it and really have that plan and be in place. I remember when I started out in ministry and before we had kids, I did a sermon, 10 ways to raise perfect kids. And then we had kids and I said, here's 2 or 3 things, try and let me know if they work.
Right.
And I think that's the deal. You want to be able to protect your children, but at the same time, you've got to teach them discernment. So instead of just saying, we're not doing this, you really need to explain why we're not doing it.
Right.
What's wrong with it.
Right. And there's such a balance between sheltering too much and also kind of having like a, you don't want to tell them too much. I'm not interested in telling my 7-year-old about women's rights and abortions where, she's being taught, hey, I'm a woman, hear me roar.
Yeah, and that's the pressure of because you're trying to protect innocence. We got a world that wants to shatter it.
Right.
And so you're going to have to make those determinations as to how do I best protect this? And realize that I'm going to send my children out, and just like Jesus sent out the disciples, I'm going to send them like sheep to wolves.
Yeah, and even like arrows.
Yeah, and then at the same time, he tells us the characteristics they've got to have, which is they need to be as wise as a serpent and gentle as a dove. Because you don't want to raise these obstinate kids that that become just so crusted in a dogma that they don't have a relationship in which they have compassion, but truth.
Right.
And that's the paradox you're trying to put them in, grace and truth. And it really is having a plan. And then, but at the same time, because so many parents are worried about this, because I don't want to injure my child's psyche. I don't want to.
Yeah.
And children are so resilient. I mean, they are blessings to be stewarded, but yes, they can be broken. But we're not talking about breakable things. Now, here's the other side. The other side says you're going to break them. If you teach them truth, you're going to break them. You're not going to teach them compassion. And that's the side that truth has no compassion. Or if you create a truth of your own. Our kids are much more resilient and much more ready to handle truth at times than we are to tell them.
Yeah.
And because they are being influenced. They are being influenced. And so when I hear parents say, well, my child's not ready for this, I said, well, tell me what songs they're singing.
Right. Yeah.
So they're ready for something.
Yeah, they're ready for something.
They may not know what the songs they're singing mean, the words they have, but they're singing them. That's already in their head. And so I think where we mess up is the world knows much more about our kids than we want to believe about them. And so you've got to be intentional and you got to have a plan. There are great things out there that you can put on your phones to keep locks and cares. Another thing I tell parents all the time, that's your phone.
That's right.
I'm letting my child use it.
Right.
But that's my phone.
That's right. Yes.
And
yeah.
that's my room. You live it. I come in your room anytime I want to.
That's right.
I mean, all this stuff, this is stuff in my house. And people go, that's just not right. Your kids have rights. The ones I give them, that's the rights they have.
Right. Real quick way to lose a door at the Lively household was slam it.
Yes.
That door was gone.
Yes, that's exactly right. So you don't get to isolate yourself and go in your room and hide.
Right.
And hide things in your room.
Right.
Now, that doesn't mean, I raised two kids that we went in their room anytime we wanted to. That doesn't mean they weren't hiding stuff. That means they got better at it. So I mean, kids are going to be kids. And there are things that you're going to find out years later that if you knew at the time, you'd have killed somebody.
Oh, yeah.
But now it's fun.
It's like now I see things and I'm like, God, I'm so glad they did not have that when I was growing up, like the Life 360. But I'm thankful for it. And I've told my daughter before, like, that's a good try.
Yeah.
I was much sneakier than you, though.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
That's a good try.
And I think that's still, we've got to learn to communicate to our kids, but pick our spots. But if the only time we're talking to our kids is to tell them wrong, it doesn't. So we got to talk to them in something that's not so reactionary, when there's nothing on the line.
Right.
And we got to figure out when those conversations are, and how do you create those moments?
Yeah, and finding out like what is giving them a proper amount of attention, the proper amount of decision making, and then understanding what's age appropriate too. I struggle with, I want you to be independent. I want you to do these things, but I also I don't want to create her having, and him having like mommy or daddy issues because I didn't give enough attention too. Too much versus too little. I feel like that's a huge issue these days too, of the hovering.
Well, we let isolated incidents somehow become a standard for behavior. So in other words, all the press all goes to these people who had daddy issues, mommy issues, and stuff like this. But there were people that grew up that didn't have those issues.
And they've got none of those.
And so, we need to understand that there are seasons that we go through. And in those seasons, we need to make sure we don't make lifetimes out of a season. I always tell couples that the primary place to start is your relationship with your spouse. That's protected. If that goes to squat, everything else comes into play. Now, again, remember this, and I tell parents this all the time. Adam and Eve had the perfect parent. They didn't blow it because their parent wasn't perfect.
Yeah.
They had the perfect environment. They didn't blow it because they were in a bad environment. They were in a perfect environment. They blew it because they didn't believe.
And the temptation was there.
And the temptation was there. And the one place they couldn't go. It's not that they went to a place where there was nothing else available. They went to the one thing that was told was unavailable. There was plenty else out there. And so when I tell parents to realize that's what you're up against. I mean, they made the decision they did with perfect parents, with perfect provision, and a perfect environment.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can do everything right, and that doesn't guarantee your kids are going to come. But we worry more about doing something wrong that's going to influence that instead of recognizing, we can do everything right, and they're going to have this choice to make.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's more about doing stuff and checking your heart, your attitude about how you're doing. But I always tell parents the main relationship to take care of, first your relationship with Christ, but then your relationship with your spouse.
Mm-hmm.
The health of that relationship is going to help dictate the environment of your home.
Mm-hmm.
Your kids need to see your relationship with your husband thrive.
And being on the same page,
And
too.
be on the same page.
Right.
Right, where they can't divide and conquer, because kids will start that early and often.
Oh, yeah. They'll say, oh, she said no. Let's go move on to daddy.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think it's working with each other to come up with the right decisions and do what you think is best, and then live with it.
Yeah.
And then that's
definitely.
just the reality of it. But create boundaries. And really, the only people that have a hard time with boundaries are the people without boundaries.
Right. Yeah. Boundaries do make happier kids. They know what they can push. And
Yes.
they know where they can go, and kind of gives them more control, too.
And
them
again,
thinking they have control,
Well, yeah,
which is really...
it really is. But the struggle is because so many other kids are doing so many things so early and so often.
Yeah.
The other thing you have to deal with is you're in this culture of activity in which so many people are doing so much so quickly.
Yes.
Where do you get a childhood?
Right.
And I hear that from parents all the time.
Yeah.
How do I get this childhood?
Right. And like in sports now, they start so young and they start so early too. I mean, I know you witnessed my son throw many tantrums on the soccer
Cooper.
field. We had to give it up for we hung that up.
Yeah.
We had to give up sports for a year because he simply wasn't old enough.
Yeah.
They just have to be at a certain maturity too, and that doesn't necessarily come with age. Each child matures so differently too. So that's something that I felt like, me personally, let that boy ride his bike and play in the dirt.
That's exactly right. Well, I'm a big fan. This is what I'm a big fan of because I think it helps both child and parent of spontaneous play.
Right.
Of getting together with some other friends, let the kids loose in the yard and let them go play. It's not organized. It's not organized sport, but it is stimulated play. Mm-hmm. Let them go out there and play, and they're going to fall down, and you're going to hear screams and yells and stuff like this. And but they learn so much there. They learn problem solving. They learn how to get along with people. Mm-hmm. Things that we talk about in the corporate world. But I tell people I learned how to handle people at a graveyard in Wadley, Georgia, where we played baseball. I mean, it was simple. You pick the best person first and the worst person last. And we didn't worry about anybody's feelings.
Right.
And we had problem solving because if you called somebody safe and somebody else called them out, you had to solve that problem either in a heated discussion or physical activity.
Yeah.
And nobody's mama got called, but we learned all of that. You learned how to handle and deal with people. You learned that people were different. Their skill sets were different. Their attitudes were different. We all knew this guy over here, he's going to have a hard time with anything. But we loved him, but we just recognized, don't ask him because he's not going to do what you want him to do. So we learned all that by playing. It wasn't anything structured. Nobody said, now tell me, watch this person and tell me, I ain't got to watch him. I can tell you who he is. I ate with him last night. The same jerk I ate with last night. So, but I think that it helps. One, it helps parents understand our kids are fighting the same fight, and also helps adults understand we're not alone in this battle. So instead of going to your recreation department, I always say go to somebody's house, let your kids play in the yard with each other, hang out with other people, let them integrate with each other and enjoy that.
And work it out.
And then it's on your schedule, not somebody else's schedule.
That's right. Yeah, definitely.
So there are alternatives, but we're scared to death if they don't get on this team and stuff like this. I'm just telling you, if they're good at 5, they'll be good at 10.
That's true.
I mean, that athletic ability is not going to go away.
Right.
But there's a time where we build these nice houses that we don't ever hang out in. And we build places to host people that we don't let them come because we're scared it's not clean enough to have people in the house.
Oh, that's not his problem.
Well, I want to say this, but I'm just going to say this. It's
Right.
okay. It's okay if people see dust on your floor.
That's right. That's
I mean,
right.
it's okay, but we're scared to death that somebody's going to say something negative about us. Go back to social media. This passive aggressive world that they're going to call me out on social media as being a dirty housekeeper.
That's right.
And so we don't want to have them over there.
Can't have that.
Yeah.
Well, talking about the recreation stuff, the big world of sports right now. Hey, what are the days we play now? All of them.
Yeah.
It's not just a practice on Monday or Tuesday, game on Saturday.
Yeah.
It's all weekend, Sunday included. So finding that balance of, well, they're signed up for it, or no, I'm taking a stand.
Yeah.
Especially when a team's counting on you, what's a healthy way, realistic approach for these? I won't even name the sport, all of them.
Yeah.
It's all the sports have Sundays.
I would say it's the health you're most concerned about when you say healthy. David Pollock is taking this on like a beast right now.
Oh, that's great.
And he is saying, your kids, if I tell every team my kids play on, this kid's pretty active, we're here Friday and Saturday. We will not be here Sunday.
And just lay the presence.
We're not coming. If you're counting on my child for a championship game on Sunday, he's probably not going to be there. Stetson Bennett the fourth, Stetson Bennett's dad, Stetson Bennett the third. We had a great conversation, and he has such a great perspective because he's got a high schooler he's still raising, and they go to a church that still has a Sunday night service. And he says, my son says, hey, Dad, we've got a football meeting tonight at 6. And he said, well, you might want to call him and tell me you ain't coming because you'll be with us.
I do think that if more Christian parents would come out
Yeah.
and just say, it's a no.
Yeah.
We could gain the numbers too.
Yeah.
If everyone would just really band together. And I want to say somebody was even talking about, well, I'll just start my own league. And it's not on Sundays.
Well, and there's some things about this. And again, referring back to Stetson, he said, here's what I tell parents today. I've got a son. He's got 2 national championships, 2 MVPs, and he's done. It's a short shelf life.
Right.
But he's got the rest of his life in front of him and an eternity to go. And we say this, and again, David Pollock brought this up recently at a men's conference. He said there's less than 0.5% your child's going to play professionally, but there's a 100% guarantee they will stand before a holy God and give an account of their life.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about health, what health are you talking about? The spiritual health or the athletic health?
Right.
Because no matter what you say, if you teach your kids that church is expendable, you're telling them what's important. And they're going to go there. So this is a great conversation, and we're going to have to come back to some of this because I know we're wrapping up, so we got a couple of minutes. So we got 2 minutes to talk about something else.
Okay.
So what else? Or you can stay on this path right here we're talking about.
Well, I mean.
So what are you sitting there and thinking about? So when you're talking to parents, what are they saying about this? Because they obviously say, I hear it too.
Right.
We don't want to do this thing on Sunday, but we feel like
they're still doing it.
Yeah.
Well, they're still doing it. I think the biggest thing too is, what is the healthy boundary with that? And also, I keep saying healthy, but also the boycotts, the book banning, the putting my child with this, even though, oh yeah, we're decked out in Target. Oh, we don't really like Target. Kind of moving forward in that direction.
I said we had 2 minutes, Brooke.
I'm sorry.
You jumped out there and
I really
right here.
just dove for it.
But I think all of those things are doing, and we'll come back and have that, and we'll do, just so folks that are listening and watching, we'll keep this conversation going. But for the sake of how many times we'll do it, we'll get this done right here. But I'd say to you, it's the pressure is there because you got to have a convictional compass. Who am I going to please? And that's going to be the tell-all. Am I going to please this culture that's always demanding and never coming through on what it promises? And the second thing I'm asking is, why are we asking so much of our kids at such a young age?
Right.
Who's putting their foot on that gas?
Mm-hmm.
Why is it? And of course, there's a monetary piece to this, and that I could get into when it comes to sports and athletics and rankings and all this kind of stuff, and what we want to believe and do about that. But it really is this thing: is we're asking our kids to find an identity in something, and then when they find it and it crashes them, we're sitting there going, "Why is my child so anxious?"
Right. Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, eating ice cream, wondering why I'm getting fat.
I know.
I mean, it's almost like we can't help ourselves. It's a train wreck.
Mm-hmm.
And so the other day, for instance, we were traveling somewhere, and if you're listening and you're not familiar with Bucky's, think Walmart with a lot of gas.
Oh, yes.
A lot of gas stations.
If you
and whatever.
pass it, you have to stop.
And I said,
Get
I
those
don't
beaver
want.
nuggets.
Yes, I said I don't want to go in here.
Yes,
it's
you do.
crazy, but I have to. It's like
Yes.
watching the wreck.
Yes.
And then we justify it. Stacey goes, but it's got really clean bathrooms.
And it's got beaver nuggets.
It's got beaver nuggets. You don't want to go there. There's no real need
I
to
do,
go
though.
there. But you got to get gas.
That's
and
right.
so why not go to Bucky's and watch all these people go into a Walmart with a gas pump?
That's right. With a beaver everywhere.
With a beaver. And no, just for the record, I have nothing in that. It's spelled differently. It's not B-U-C-K-Y. It's B-U-C-C.
I know, and the way Siri says it is
And-
Boosies.
And everybody that knows me goes to Bucky's, take a picture, and send it to me. Stopped at your store today.
That's right. I will tell you, circling back to the parenting too.
Yeah.
My favorite quote, I think I've heard you say, I mean, you got a lot, but it would be, what is irrelevant to one generation is optional to the next.
Yes.
And that is like a staple tattoo in my brain and
Wow.
in my heart, because I don't want my kids to think it's relevant.
Well, and we're going to come back and talk about that. But so if you like this conversation, thank you. And again, thanks for listening to the show. You can hear more from Bucky Kennedy Ministries. You can go to buckykennedyministries.org. That's our webpage. You can follow us on Facebook. You can follow us at Bucky Kennedy Ministries on Instagram and Facebook, of course. YouTube, Bucky Kennedy Ministries. And again, you can subscribe and you can listen to our podcast. And we have an app, Bucky Kennedy's app you can download. There's all kind of ways to find Bucky Kennedy Ministries and this on Spotify. We're on Spotify and we're on Apple Play. You can listen to this. So we're going to continue this conversation with Brooke. And so join us to hear this conversation continued. God bless you. Have a great day.
For more content like today's podcast, click right here. For sermons, click right here. And again, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. Have a blessed day.